Skyrim is definitely one of the games of all time, and its mascot, the Dragonborn, is one of the most recognizable characters in all of gaming, so making an Elden Ring run based around that character was a no-brainer, and it's been done before. Oh well. The gameplay feature that defines Skyrim is the shout system, and I wanted to base this video on that. The Dragon Communion School of Incantations has a bunch of spells that could be considered equivalent to the Dragonborn's shouts. So we got the basic Fire and Frost shouts, Storm Call, and Dragon Aspect. As for the most popular shout, which is of course the Unrelenting Force, Beast's Roar seemed like the best fit. So the rules for this run were, I needed to defeat all of the Shroudbearer bosses, I could only use the Dragon Communion Incantations and Beast's Roar Ash of War for damage, and I could not use any summons. I will also be playing with the first person mod to kind of simulate the first person view camera that Skyrim is known for. That is actually a lie. I just wanted to play with the first person mod. If you want to try the mod out for yourself, I will put the link to it in the description. So without further ado, let's get to it. After spending a substantial amount of time in the character customizations menu, 5 minutes to be exact, I ended up with this guy and started the run. Now, I gotta say, entering Limgrave and seeing it in first person for the first time was quite cool. So I got Torrent, the Physic Flask, first half of the Dectus Medallion, I then got the Morning Star to use against Grail, I then got the Faith Tier, acquired my Drip, made the Knight's Cavalry do a somersault, got the second half of the Dectus Medallion, and decided to deal with the big Dragon Mama. With the 5 Dragon Hearts that I got from Grail, I was able to purchase pretty much all of the required incantations for this build, got the second Smithing Stone Bell Bearing, and traveled to the Volcano Manor to get the Erd Tree Seal. I then upgraded it, went back to Caelid to get the Faithful's Canvas Talisman, and the final thing that I needed was the Dragon Communion Seal, which gives a passive boost to all of the Dragon Communion incantations. With 2.5 hours of prep time done and dealt with, I resumed the run by fighting the first main story opponent, Margit. The first person view was quite nauseating at times, not gonna lie, but it was a pretty fun experience nonetheless. I then decided to get myself the Banished Knight's Greatsword, just cause I wanted to, and had to spend 3 hours farming for it. Suffice it to say, I was pretty much done with the game at that point, only to resume the run on the next day by fighting Godric. With the centipede-looking motherfucker 6 feet under, I traveled around the world collecting 4 deathroots, which I was planning on trading in to get a cool new Ash of War, Beast's Roar, which would be a stand-in for Skyrim's most famous shout. You guessed it, Clear Skies. I then got the Fire Scorpion Charm, the Roar Medallion, and completed Millicent's questline up until I could get the Flock's Canvas Talisman. Right after that, I completed Varys' questline to gain access to the Rune Farm, and moved on over to Rennala. Surprisingly enough, she was quite difficult this time around. Who would have guessed that a mod that restricts your view of the surrounding areas in a game, where a crucial part of the gameplay loop is knowing where enemy attacks are going, would make spellcasters a pain in the rear to deal with?
Let me guess. Someone stole your sweet roll.
With Renala safe and sound in her academy, I decided it was time to try out Radahn. I was pretty excited about that, seeing as how he is one of my favorites, and even though the same problem of not being able to see what the big guy was doing that I had to endure with Renala happened here as well, I still found this fight to be quite entertaining. And right after that, I went to the Red Main Castle to pick up the Red Hot Wet Blade for the Flame Art attunement and made the decision to fight Rykard for one very specific reason. But first, I had to go through the Godskin Noble, which was a pain in the rear as usual, then moved over to Rykard, thinking that I could beat this guy with incantations only, and I couldn't. So I resorted to using the weapon that was specifically designed to be used in this fight. And after Rykard went down, I had to fight Tanif's Crucible Knight, who drops the aspect of the Crucible Breath incantation, which would be a replacement for the Dragonfire incantation. I then tested out the newly acquired tool against the tree avatar, and it went pretty well. And after that, I went on a hunt to get more Dragon Hearts. After stocking up on the Dragon Hearts, I got the Grail's Roar incantation, demolished the Tree Sentinel Guard in the capital, and defeated the Golden Shade of Godfrey, which was a nice practice round for the eventual fight against the real Godfrey. I then got a bunch of upgrades for my seal, upgraded it to +9, and got the Black Wet Blade for the Occult Infusion for my Banished Knight's Greatsword. Morgoth was... how do I put this? Obnoxious. This guy was a menace during this run purely because of how agile he is. Like, I literally couldn't keep track of his movements while in first person, so the only real strat for him this time around was to just phase tank most of his attacks in phase 1 via the help of the Magnificent Dragonclaw incantation, which thankfully has a lot of poise while being cast. Then I would use Ice Breath on the big guy to proc Frostbite, and the rest of the fight will be a walk in the park. I then moved over to the mountaintops of the Giants, where I got the third Smith in Stone Bell Bearing, and did a little bit more cleanup on the dragons to get even more Dragon Hearts. Later on, I purchased all of the upgraded Dragon Communion incantations, immediately tested them out on this poor tree avatar to get the Opaline Crystal tier, and moved on over to the Fire Giant. Hey, that's actually pretty cool. I am not fighting an ankle for once, and I can see what this guy is doing, so yeah. The first person view came in clutch this time around, which allowed me to come out of this fight with my sanity semi-intact, and I was able to progress further into Fire Mazula. Yes, the dreaded Godskin duo fight was upon me, and there was no way that I would be able to complete this fight with all of my hair intact if I didn't use the sleep pots. So the strat for them this time around was debuff both of them with Grail's Roar, put them to sleep, smack them around a little bit with the Dragon Claw incantation, rinse and repeat, and they went down on the first try. With the rest of Fire Mazula open to exploration, I got the Drake Knight set just cause the helmet looks awesome, and moved on over to Placiduous Axe. Now, I haven't fought this guy in quite some time, and I apparently managed to forget how cinematic that fight is, and having to experience it in first person was just so cool. So next up, I decided to go on a trip to the Halig Tree as I needed a bunch of talismans from that legacy dungeon, like the Pearl Drake and the Dragon Crest Great Shield talismans.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
I also got the Silver Scarab talisman, which increases the drop rates of farmable items, and decided to farm the Iron Greatsword, which is just a dead ringer for Skyrim's Iron Sword. I then got the Shard of Alexander, and it was time for Malekith's boss fight. One cool thing about it is that you can cast Grail's Roar from behind the pillar, and it would still apply the debuff on Malekith. And after that, it was just a matter of not dying. Easy, right? After being done with Malekith, it was time for the usual funky time with Gideon. This was a pleasure, as usual. Moving on to Godfrey, I'm so used to fighting this guy with the camera locked on to be able to avoid his attacks, that having to do those same movements without being locked on was making me quite dizzy. With my man Godfrey finally at rest, I decided to take a shot at trying to beat Malenia and Moog. The former wasn't nearly as stress-inducing as I thought she would be, thanks in part to Dragon Maw, which is a surprisingly good spell.
order of the Jarl, stop right there.
What about Moog? Well, I might have bit him to death, which is quite an interesting way to go out, honestly. So, with all of the Shardbearer bosses finally defeated, it was time for Radagon and the Elden Beast, which went about as well as you would expect. Radagon was particularly difficult to deal with, as being able to cast spells or attack quickly is the go-to method against him. But guess what? The animations on my entire arsenal of incantations took about 5 business days to resolve, so this guy quickly became one of the more difficult bosses to deal with the only real go-to strat against him being face tanking all of his attacks. Elden Beast, on the other hand, was quite simple to deal with, thankfully.
By the order of the Jarl, stop right there.
So, after beating the celestial dragon god, the Dragonborn finally became the Elden Lord. If you want to try this build out, here are the stats with the talismans for PvE and for PvP. Thank you everybody for watching, have a good one, peace.